Hey everyone, welcome to Rookie Mistakes, episode 2. On today's episode, I have on Jennifer Landon. She's a real estate broker in Los Angeles. This was a really good episode, a lot of great info and very motivating. So I hope you enjoy. The video actually cut out at around the hour and 7 minute mark when we were recording. The battery died, of course. So just a warning there, the video does cut out for maybe a minute or two and then it picks back up. I just had to change the battery, so not too big of a deal. If you are looking to get in contact with Jen, maybe you're looking to buy or sell a house in the Los Angeles area, you can reach out to her at Landon Realty Group on Facebook or Instagram. That's Landon for Landon. And then I believe her email is Jennifer at lrgla.com. And the website is lrgla.com. So reach out to her in any of those places. And then if you are someone that enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also listen to the audio only on any of the major podcasting apps. So subscribe and leave a review there. That would be greatly appreciated. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. Thanks.
I just want
That's
to make
fine.
sure.
Yeah. We're just getting into it. It's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, good. Well, I'm of the firm belief that I'm still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up kind of thing. I'm always learning and exploring and trying new things. However, that's just for me as a person that always wants to be expanding. So I'm open to all kinds of things. But as I've gotten older, I have gotten a lot more selective on where I'm going to put my time and my money to make sure that I'm intentionally able to retire and to have a lifestyle and not have to work forever. You know, when I was younger, I explored everything. I mean, not only did I have a dance school at the same time as I had a real estate business and a real estate appraisal company. I mean, I could go on. And I did all of that. But the older I've gotten, I've had to really narrow my focus into, okay, I want to be able to achieve this type of financial wealth in order to be able to then feed more of the fun expanding later in life.
Okay, so did you go to college or no?
Yeah, I went to USC.
USC. Okay, and what was like your first career out of school?
Oh, goodness.
Do you remember?
Okay, so I remember everything. So when I went to USC, I was hell-bent on becoming an attorney. I wanted to be an activist, a legislative counselor, and move to Washington, D.C. and fight for women's and children's issues. That was my platform, that I always felt like I wanted to be a social servant and give back and really fight for injustice. Upon graduating, I packed my bags and had just a little bit of wad of cash in my pocket, and I moved to Washington, D.C. and was sleeping on my friend's brother's couch for 2 weeks trying to figure it out. I wound up getting an internship with Congressional George Brown, who was the longest running congressman at the time. He has since passed away. At the same time, volunteering at Now. And working at Hard Rock Cafe at night. So I would leave at like 6:30 in the morning and get home at midnight every night.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It really taught me a lot about work ethic. It also made me realize that office job really isn't for me. And I also got to see the system up close and personal, and I really got disenchanted with it quickly. The whole, you do this for me, we'll vote for this for you. And I came home deflated because my whole dream of what I thought it was wound up not being what I thought it was. And I had to regroup. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. What I did know is that I had to figure it out fast because I found out I was having a baby. So I had a baby younger. I was
How old were you?
I was 21 or 22 when
22.
I had her.
Okay.
So 22 when I found out I was going to have her, and I fell back right away into property management. I was working for Charles Dunn at the time, and my brother-in-law was a realtor, and he was killing it. And he's like, it's so easy. And first of all, that is a lie. He was really good at it and intentional. And I thought, maybe I'll do this. My family came from a long line of contractors. My dad was a general contractor, so homes never scared me. So I kind of fell into it because it fit what I needed for my life, which was flexibility, which is kind of a joke because real estate really isn't flexible, but it has the illusion of flexibility.
Working all the
But you
time.
don't have to be in an office flexible, and that's what I needed. And the second capacity, which was the ability to be able to make as much as you wanted to make. No ceiling cap, but it also means you make as little as you could possibly make too, right? So that's really how I fell into it. And for many years, I was still trying to find myself, you know?
And so, okay, so you've been doing real estate then for a while.
Since 1999, and
Okay.
previous to that, property management. So I've been doing it, property management, since I was 19 years old, if you want to say.
So then kind of talk about when you started then in the real estate. What, like, did you have success right away? Was it like a struggle for a long time? Because you kind of hear the stories, right? I mean, at least from like interviews I've heard of realtors that are really successful, like the $1 million listing people, right? They always talk about like, oh, I didn't have a listing for a year and I had to work really hard and I knocked on doors and, you know, so on and so forth. And then I finally got it. So was that kind of like how it was for you, or like, did you have success kind of quick?
Would they have like an angel on my shoulder that just gave me instant success? I believe success is really, you know, timing mixed with effort and just due process. I mean, that's really, you keep doing that. It's consistency over time. What I did have going for me was that I really knew how to relate to people and talk to people of all ages. Honestly, anybody getting into this business, I guarantee some of the top producers are people that used to be bartenders, waitresses in that service industry, because you know the grind. There's a timing, and it's all about, you know, making the client happy and adapting to them. So I already had that mentality because I'd already been doing that. So I knew how to relate to people of all walks and generations because I was waiting tables in LA. But the disadvantage I had was my age and my age group and my sphere. The people that were around me, they were all waiters and bartenders. So none of them were buying houses. So I had to, the hard part was to get out there and to create a market that people would, number one, accept me for my age, and be willing to work with me. And the fact that I had to create a whole new sphere. That was probably my biggest obstacle. And I had to do it by being able to get strangers to trust me. So for me, open houses were my biggest thing. And I would meet people, they would start to trust me and build credibility and move forward that way. And believe it or not, for a period of time, I was also cold calling a lot, and I was really good on the phone just by luck. I think, you know, they'd hear my voice and I didn't sound like the typical, I guess, marketer. So yeah, it was a grind. I had some luck, and I had a lot of losses too. So.
Do you remember how long it was before you did like your first deal when you started pursuing it, real estate?
So
like how long did it take to get a deal? Do you remember that?
Yeah, so I got my license in January, and I don't remember exactly, but I think within, I would say 3 months, I had my first deal. And I went into an office with a lot of agents that had been around for a while. And back then what would happen is the newbies would come in, and the agents that had been around, they'd kind of like pick who, if they wanted to like take you under their wing, right? And luckily, I guess I was likable enough that I actually did get 2 of the top agents to take me under their wing. So one of them would just, he would come in, and, you know, agents that have been around for a while, they get a little bit, I don't want to say lazy, that's such a negative word, but they get a little bit like less incentivized to do certain tasks that are necessary. So he would say, look, I got all these calls from this listing. He didn't want to call him back because he didn't want to bother to do the filter. That's a hustle. So I'm like, I'll call him. So I called him back, and I'm like, this person, they want to go see this house. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So I was converting people, and then he would take it because I didn't know what to do after that.
Okay.
So my first deal was actually, and I think he was actually a little bit mad. He gave me the lead afterwards, but he still shared it. But yeah, so I got lucky on that. And then on another one of the other top agents that was a really big cold caller, he's actually still a big agent today and has a large team, took me on, and I was cold calling, and I got a listing appointment, believe it or not, from this sweet little old lady. And he said, look, I'll go with you, because I didn't have a listing. I didn't have a presentation. I didn't know what to do after I booked the appointment. So he went with me, and between the two of us, I think we offered a dynamic that she was comfortable with, and we got the listing. It was overpriced and it didn't sell, I will say that. But I got the listing, which was a huge ego boost.
So then when you actually like sold your first property, was it kind of easy or was it difficult? Like kind of talk about, because you said that like when you had your first client that the real estate agent kind of did all the work, right? And you kind of just got it right in the beginning. So like what was the first deal where you kind of like did everything?
So I did wind up having a college friend of mine who called me out of the blue. She was the only person in my sphere that was actually in the position to purchase. Believe it or not, the only one. And thank goodness she called me, and she was kind enough to give me that honor. But she was like, we want to buy a condo. And so I helped her and her husband buy a condo. And then a year and a half later, they decided to move to San Diego, and I actually helped her sell it. So I think she was actually my first or second deal, but my first listing that I did from start to finish by myself. And by the time I did it, I was ready. I had learned a lot, but I'd also been doing it for about a year by the time I had my own first official listing by myself.
Okay. And then when did you, because you're a broker.
And just so you know, that listing was $107,000.
Really? Wow.
And I just remember going like, someday I wish I had a $300,000 listing. That was like my big goal, was to sell Burbank the 300,000 to 400,000 range. And I had a condo, which was still respectable. And if my friends listening, I still appreciate you using me, but as agents, we look up to these $1 million agent listing people, and we think, oh, it's so fabulous. But what you don't realize is that with every dollar that's added, so does the pressure, and so does the marketing dollars that you put behind it, quite honestly. So it's a very complex business that people don't understand.
And now everything's like $1 million.
I know.
At least here, right? Yeah. So anyone listening, we're in Los Angeles. So yeah, the like prices here are kind of insane compared to other places.
I know. And it is sad when someone comes and they're like, I want to buy a house. And if you can't at least do $1 million, you're like, oh, well, let's see what we can scrape up for you. And it's so sad to me because it's $1 million. It's a lot of money. It's really respectable to be able to afford $1 million. Yeah. But it winds up just being numbers when you're throwing it around, and it's insane sometimes.
Yeah. So, okay. So how then long into being a realtor did you decide to be a broker and open your own brokerage? Like when did that happen?
So I had an interesting journey here. So I think I already had premised that I had a child young. I got married. I wound up starting my family. And by the time I was 29 years old, I had 3 kids, a minivan. I was getting divorced, and I had a total life meltdown crisis that I was like, oh my God, I'm 29. I have 3 kids. I drive a minivan. This is not my life. What is happening? I'm supposed to be cool, So I had this.
And working full time too?
Oh yeah. At the same time, I had a dance. I was starting a dance school at that time with some friends of mine, pursuing my passion. Although I love real estate, I feel like I'm an artist at heart. Then I tried to protect that, plus being a mom. And I had to make some changes in my life because of my separation and my pending divorce. So I actually got my appraisal license at that time. And I stepped away from the selling side for over 10 years. And I did that intentionally because I really needed to be present for my kids and control my schedule more, which wasn't possible. I don't know. I mean, how many people have purchased a house or if they've been in real estate, but when you find it, you got to go, you have to be available. And I had a 5-year-old, I had a 2.5-year-old, and I had a 1-year-old. So, I mean, this was, they were really keeping me busy. Yeah, I didn't have, and there was no one to like take them. So I switched over, and it honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. People would say, did you decide to become an appraiser because you make more money? And it was a joke, right? They didn't know. And I'm like, no, I became an appraiser because I needed to control my schedule, and I needed to know that when I did something that I was going to get paid. Because in real estate, there are a lot of jobs in real estate, including processors and transaction coordinators and escrow and title. Nobody gets paid if the transaction doesn't go through, but the appraiser does.
Okay.
So I did appraising. People tried to talk me out of it. They said it's never going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. And I had to sit down and really do soul searching. And I thought, you know what? I bet you it's hard to be an actor too. And I bet it's hard to have a screenplay or to become a professional. Everything's hard. So I just got on with it, and I decided that it was going to happen because it was a do or die. I had 3 kids. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't going to go back and get my law degree. And I did it. And, I feel like when you make that decision to jump, that the net always appears. And I was actually introduced to, through my sphere, someone that had a mortgage company that I didn't even know they had a mortgage company. This was someone in the real estate industry I hadn't met. And she's like, you really should meet my friend. He owns a mortgage company. I'm like, okay, great. So I met him. He wound up being the #1 lender in Burbank, and so nice. He actually helped me build my career because I went to him after we became friends, and I said, look, will you use me if I become an appraiser? And he said, absolutely. And he allowed me to promote myself, which you could do at that time. It is different now. And I have to owe my whole career to him allowing me to do that, quite honestly. We did have some ups and downs in that industry that crashed. It's subject to the market just like realtors are. But in the end, I always did it knowing that when my youngest was a certain age that I would come back into the market. And when I did, I decided I was going to get my broker's license. It was a natural transition. And then from there, just jump out on my own. So it was a journey. It was definitely a journey.
So how long then has this brokerage been going then?
So this brokerage was founded, oh gosh, you're holding me to dates. I live in the moment, Connor. I'm present. I'm kidding. I think that officially Landon Realty Group was formed in 2018. Okay. 2018. And I became a broker, I believe, in 2016, I believe. So I was a broker under another brokerage, and then kind of decided when I was going to break away, and then started from there.
And what was the main motivation for, like, one, obviously your kids are older, so you have more time, right? But is it like, was it to make more money? Was it to like challenge yourself, like a new adventure? What was kind of the motivation behind that?
To go back into the sales side. So I always knew I wanted to. I just knew I had to be intentional about it and be able to set myself up in order to dedicate the time. It was really the time. And so I kind of dipped my toes in slowly. I had a partner at first because I was really wanted to make sure that when I went back, I got to learn from everyone's mistakes that I saw, especially on the appraisal side. The fact of what I learned on that, I mean, it's head and shoulders above like the normal realtor. No offense to realtors, but it's a whole nother vast area that you don't really get to dip your toes in unless you're actually in it. So I got to watch everyone's mistakes, and I decided I'm going to do this my way when I go back in. And I did do it for two reasons. Number one, to prove to myself, because I never really felt like I got to finish what I started initially. I stopped because life kind of pivoted me in a new direction, and I went into appraisals more out of necessity. And second, because it's great money, and I wanted to be able to make a certain amount to achieve certain goals that I had in order to then do other things.
Okay. So you mentioned a little earlier about the dance studio. So and you said that was one of your big passions. So did you dance growing up, and is that kind of where that came from, or what's the story behind the passion for dancing?
Yeah, so at the young age of 3, my mother put me in dance class like most little girls do, and I danced until I graduated from high school. I was in a lot of ballet programs. I did all forms, but ballet was my primary discipline. I did a lot of dance competitions, and I danced my whole life. And for me, the blessing of it is it taught me discipline. It taught me failure, and you get up anyways. And even when you think, and just for the mere fact of doing something just because you love it, or in seeing things through. So it taught me grit, and to be able to stand up anyways when you think even if they're not going in your favor. So I think that really has contributed to my work ethic, 100%.
And has that ever been a challenge for you, kind of balancing the dance studio with doing the appraisal stuff or like real estate? Has that been, how does that
balance? What's that? Are you talking? There's no balance. There's no work-life balance.
Like, does it ever get in the way? Does one get in the way of the other? Did you have to learn how to kind of at least make it work? Maybe it's not, maybe you're not balancing it right. It's like, it's crazy, it's madness, but was there a time where you struggled with that?
Well, it was a constant balancing act, and it's always triage. Like, okay, what's on fire? Where are you at? I mean, at that time, and I look back because I'm like, someday I'm gonna be able to come home and just have dinner like a normal person on a Wednesday and be done with work, and that's never been me. And when I look back at my whole trajectory of my life, I'm like, well, even when I was out of college and I was gone from 7 to midnight because I was doing so much, it's like I haven't stopped. My goal is to slow down, just so you know. There's no glory in working that much, just so everyone knows. I don't think it's glory. It's just I'm a very determined person with very specific goals on a very specific timeline. And so if you want to get it done, you got to get it done. In that case, I was ferociously trying to hold on something that I loved for myself while sharing and doing everything else in my life for my family. So maybe it was the selfish part of me saying, no, I love this and this is my part, but I also got to incorporate my children into it. I was my girls' teacher. So there was the balance in that, but not balance with sleep. I worked until people would say, did you really email me at 2 a.m.? I'm like, don't worry about it. Yeah, I didn't watch TV for 10 years. Yeah, there was none of that.
Okay. Interesting. So, and then is that, I guess, do you treat it like a business, or is it just about the passion? Like, do you care if you're making money? Are you even making money? What's the story?
I'm so glad you asked that, because one of the lessons that I've learned, and I would encourage anybody that is an artist, it's a double-edged sword, because once you take something that you love so much that, and you're like, oh, I love it so much, I would do it for free. Right. Be very careful of putting that in the universe, because the universe is like, great, then you get to do it for free. And you just manifested that. And because when I first started it, it was something that I really love to do, and I was doing it for my kids. Like, the dad that coaches soccer at ASO, that then it just kind of grows, and next thing you know, he's like, whoa, I'm doing all this and I'm still not getting really compensated in a way, someone that was intentionally making it a business. So that would be my first thing. The second thing is, you know, when you start getting paid for something that you love that much, and then you start depending on that income as well, that also sometimes chips away a little bit at, you start making choices on your art that maybe because you need the money versus because, the trade-off, because you're like, no, this is my art, I don't care. You start to make, choices like that. But that's what happens when you have a business. I mean, you do have to create a business model, and every business person will tell you, while, there's probably a lot that they love, there's a lot that they wish they didn't have to do because it just has to get done. So I just caution anybody that goes into a field that they're that passionate about. It's kind of like working at Disneyland, and then you see behind the scenes and you're like, oh, I still like Disneyland, but that kind of loses the sparkle, right? That's all. So you're like, oh yeah, the truth.
So do you think then, let's say you can make the money you're making in real estate with the dance studio, would you even be doing real estate? Would you just focus on the dance studio, or do you actually like real estate enough to where you would want to still do both?
So I'm a
Or did you even try, maybe? Did you ever try to like make it the dance studio like a bigger thing to where you could just do that for work?
So in all fairness, the goal with the dance school, and we also had a nonprofit production company at the same time. So we had these two, and a summer camp and all kinds of things that we had done. The dream was always to get it to a place where it could sustain me and my business partners financially, so we wouldn't have to do anything else. But the reality is, and the sad part in arts and in that field in general, it's a struggle because it's expensive, and just living in Los Angeles and the cost of overhead. I'm not saying it can't be done. I absolutely can. It's just a challenge. So, would I be doing it now? I would have to say where I'm at now, I don't think I think I'm done. I did it for 14 years. So I think I ran my course. I always said I would go back and teach again. I wouldn't want to be the owner. I'm kind of in student mode again when it comes in my artistic side of my life. And so I'm really enjoying being the student and not having to be in the front and be the leader, and enjoying it. But so I think I'm at this point, I'd have to say no. I think I'm good.
So do you think then, let's say you never did it and didn't have that passion, do you feel like something would be lacking in your life for all that time? Or do you think you needed that in your life?
Oh, it kept me from crazy.
Okay.
Because I think my personality, I'm so type A, and like, I can't leave until everything is off my desk. I can't have to, and that it's like, I don't know how many people do this, but like, you're like, oh good, I got through all my emails, I'm ready to go. And then someone sends you an email. I can't ignore it. I'm like, and so I have to sit and like and I have to hurry up and turn it off before someone sends me a new email, because I'll be stuck there, so having that like complete change to break me away from that, because I had students waiting. I was like, well, it has to wait. I think I would have been even more miserable, because it wouldn't have given me a creative outlet, that given me that breath. So it was, and every time I would leave from teaching, I'd feel so good. So I think it saved me, especially during my divorce.
So the passion was teaching dance, not necessarily just dancing.
Correct.
Okay.
I love the dance, I love the art form, but it was also connecting with my students. They are actually part of that whole equation that really balanced me, the connection that you feel when you work in an office, or we're behind our computers, or I'm driving all day, because doing appraisals, it's very autonomous. I mean, you're lonely. I mean, you go to the house, you might say hi to the owner, and then you go home. I got to go and connect and create with these beautiful souls, these young children that are so innocent and amazing. And yeah, it fed me. It fed me spiritually and emotionally, for sure.
Okay. So now I kind of want to go back to when you were younger. Were you always like, how would you describe yourself? Were you confident? Were you shy? Like what were you like?
As a young child.
Like even just like think middle school, like high school, around then.
Oh,
Because like to me now, you seem like you're a go-getter, right? Like you seem confident. You go after what you want. There doesn't seem to really be doubt. So were you always like that, or did you have to kind of develop that
so I th- I've been doing a lot of thinking about this whole, are we a product of our environment, or how is it that our personalities are developed, that we feel like we can have that for ourselves, or that we even imagine it. For example, I remember when I watched an interview of Elon Musk for the first time, and it ended, and I couldn't even close my mouth, and I'm like, oh my God, I think too small. That's what I thought, because his thinking was so big. And the whole time I'm listening to him, like, he did not doubt himself. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm thinking too small. But then at the same time, like, that's like a lot of work. I'm like, do I really want that headache? But irrespective if you want the headache, the fact is I didn't even allow myself to go there. And I know sometimes people look at me and they think the same thing. Like, who told her she could have a brokerage? Or who told her she could just start a dance school? Or who told her she could start a production company and invite 5,000 kids to come? And I remember looking at my business partner one time at our very first time that we were having this school show, and all these kids are coming in this auditorium, and there's like 3,000 kids. And I looked at her, I go, who gave us permission to do this? Like, what are we doing? And it's like this exhilarating feeling. And if I have to go backwards to see, like, why did I just do it? Undoubtedly, it is my parents. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My dad owned his own business. In fact, I would be embarrassed sometimes going places with him, because he would do whatever he wanted. Like, my dad would go to a restaurant and decide to walk through the kitchen. And I'm like, Dad. He's like, well, I'm going to take a shortcut to the parking lot. And I'm like, Dad. And he's like, I don't care. He does what he wanted. And he's like, what are they going to do? Put me in kitchen police? Whatever. And like, they would stare at him. And it wasn't like he would cook the food or anything, but he just did what he wanted, and he didn't have any apologies for it. And so I think that brassness, now he was extreme. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to be that brassy. But just where he just did what he wanted and took it. And, he'd be like, I'm going to get that lot and I'm going to build a house. And I'd be like, and we're like, okay. So like nothing was out of the question, as far as in my reality as a child. He decided he wanted to become a pilot. He got a pilot license and he started flying us. He decided he wanted to learn Spanish. He learned Spanish. And I don't know where he got it from, to be honest with you, just knowing his background, other than he was the youngest of 10 kids. So he got to watch 9 siblings do and accomplish different things. That's all I can think of. But so having that instilled in me in a young age, that confidence of, you want something, go get it. Nothing is off limits. And then my mother, who also started her own business and bought a home, and was one of the first women to probably even buy a home, honestly, looking back. And she just did it. So I think when it comes to certain things in business, I definitely got it from them. Unfortunately, I also inherited probably some of their limitations as well, as, you can do this, but be safe. Do it, but don't get too crazy, and there's limitations in that way. Whereas my dad wouldn't have tried to build a tunnel from Brentwood to to his factory. Well, maybe he would have. Who knows? I don't know.
So that's interesting because, like you said, he was very entrepreneurial. But then it seems like you were on the traditional route where you went to USC, went to a good college, and then you were going the like white collar route where you moved to DC, you're working for a congressman, and you hate it. So was he like when you talked to him about that, was he encouraging? Did he understand? Was he like, "What are you doing? Like you need to stay there and keep working." Like what was that like?
That's actually a good question. So by the time I did go, my dad had actually passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It was a long time ago. It was all good. But before, when I went to USC and I told him, Dad, I want to be a lawyer. And he's like, lawyer? Why don't you be a doctor? And I'm like, and he'd always try to talk me. I'm like, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, I don't like needles, Dad. You should be a doctor. Doctors are better. Like he saw it as lawyers because as being a businessman, lawyers are who sued you. Lawyers were jerks. Lawyers were liars. Lawyers were not like, they didn't do anything good because he was in court a lot. We don't need to go into that. But the doctors were the saviors, right? And so he kind of grunted at my choices. But I think just because of the relationship we had and knowing that he knew I was going to do what I wanted to do in the end. And I did it on my own. I didn't have a lot of financial support from my parents. He just kind of like, I was his youngest girl. He was tired. He was like, do what you want, whatever. We didn't try to talk me out of it other than saying doctors are better.
But was there any pressure ever, like encouragement to start a business since he was entrepreneurial? Because that's interesting that he kind of wanted more stability for you, it seems, right?
You would think that he would. And I think that doctors sounded stable to him. So he was in contracting, and maybe this is where the limitations come in play. Other than building properties and owning properties and some rentals, he I don't want to throw him on the bus, but he was a little sexist. And so I don't ever think he thought of me following in his path in any capacity because I was a girl. But he expected all of his sons to work for him and to be in his business. So I got off the hook of being pulled into his world because, girls don't go to job sites and girls stay home and they look pretty and they clean the house, which is something I've been also probably proving myself against all these years of like, I'm a girl and I can do it, damn it.
So do you think that's a big thing for you though?
That
motivates you?
Big time.
Big time. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And were you hearing that from your dad like at a very young age, or was that more when you were older, like high school, kind of college? Like was that really ingrained in you?
Oh yeah. Girls, don't worry, you're a girl, you don't have to do it. And I was like, but wait a minute, I can do this. And so I think that probably is another part of this, like maybe chip on my shoulder to prove myself and to really work hard because no one ever expected me to but you're a girl. And it's terrible and I don't agree with it. Unfortunately, there's a huge generation of people that are raised that way though. He didn't even expect it of me.
Yeah. That's interesting. But then would you have changed that though? Because like you said, it kind of gave you a chip on your shoulder and you are where you are today probably because of that to an extent. So would you change that?
I wouldn't change it only for the reason that it gave me freedom because I wasn't under his radar so much. I got to kind of fly and do my own thing. Not to say he wouldn't express his opinion, but then, he would leave me alone and go refocus. So on the boys. So I think the boys had it worse.
So I want to go back then to, you said a little bit earlier, you're 29, 3 kids, getting divorced. Would you have any advice for that 29-year-old today, knowing what you know now and how it all turned out, or did it kind of like work out?
Boy.
Any like cheat codes? What would you say?
I would tell her that, wow, you have a long ways to go, but don't be discouraged. The best is still yet to come. You haven't even started yet. I was still in school, like life school in the basis. And I would encourage everybody in their 20s to not even rush. And if I had any advice and I can't even take credit for it, I have to give it to Gary Vee. If you guys know Gary Vee, we all love him. But he actually helped me parenting wise even look at my own kids who were getting ready to graduate high school and going into college. He was talking about a parent that's like, my kid is 22 and they don't have their life together and they have a job. He's like, they're 22. Like, what's wrong with you? And I had to take pause on that again, kind of like when I listened to the Elon Musk interview, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so right. They're so young and they don't even know who they are. So, like, give them a break for a minute. I'm fortunate enough to be in an economic position to be able to help my kids have that opportunity. I would have loved to have that opportunity as a 22-year-old. I didn't, because my family, if you weren't at home doing certain things, you didn't get any of the booty, okay? So you flew the nest, you're on your own, and I wanted freedom. So there's a price for freedom. So I would say you don't know who you are, and my life, I didn't even figure out or feel like I was an adult until I was 36. Honestly,
even having the 3 kids
and I had a teenager, and finally I woke up one day and I was like, I like felt like I got this. Like, I know who I am. That whole time I was like in life school. So don't worry about it. That's my advice. Learn everything. Try everything, but use your own intuition and your own judgment. And if you know a decision is not right for you or is right for you, don't listen to anybody else. And it's okay to change your mind. Change it 1,000 times. Just know the consequence of changing it, and don't be mad when you're like, oh, it took me 50 changes to get here, so now I'm at square one. Own it, yeah. And just move forward, right? Just understand that.
So was there a catalyst when you were 36 where you felt like an adult? Was there something that happened, or did you just kind of like, oh?
I think I just like had an expansion where I just looked around and I'm like, wow, I got this. This is what it means, like, to be adulting. Adulting's hard. And it's not like, oh, you're 21, you're an adult. That isn't it. I think it's just an awareness where you're like, I got this down. I know what I'm doing. I know what decisions to make. I know how to take care of myself. I know that no matter what happens, I can figure it out. I think that is the tipping point. No matter what happens, you know that you can bounce back and you can handle anything.
So that came when you were 36, that confidence, of feeling that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, what? Start over? What, again? I've done that. Doesn't scare me.
So that brings up, you mentioned briefly 07, 08, right? That financial collapse. That was all the mortgage industry.
Yep.
And you're doing appraisals.
Oh my gosh.
So how was that for you? Was it like, oh, I'm not making money now all of a sudden and I have to like figure out what I'm going to do? Or were you like, did you have like kind of a buffer where you had like savings where you could kind of figure it out? Or what was that like? Was that really tough?
So it was, I was one of the lucky ones that didn't go bankrupt, quite honestly. So at the time, when I was 29, I was about to get a divorce. My husband and I actually reconciled. Okay. So we wound up not getting divorced, but we're separated for several years. Doesn't matter if you get divorced or not. You even file the paperwork and go there. It causes a financial distress. Okay. So we were just kind of getting our bearings back from that. He was in the real estate industry too. He was a realtor. I had my appraisal company and I was cranking. We were so busy. I had 12 appraisers working for me in my company all over Southern California. We were probably easily doing 50 to 60 appraisals a week, easily. Overnight, all gone.
Wow.
Gone.
Wow.
And we're looking around going, what? I mean, we knew it was coming, but we didn't know how severe the impact was going to be because nobody knew what to do because a whole new set of rules came into place that made it that actually hindered us to be able to even receive an appraisal. So what happened is lenders didn't know what to do either, and so they all stopped. And then the market started trickling down. And this was for the appraisal side. The market was already starting to slow down from the meltdown, but then new lending guidelines came in that stopped appraisals just by itself. Okay. It took probably 3 to 4 months before it slowly came back. But in the meantime, I had to go back to basics. I had to let every single one of my appraisers go.
Wow.
I had to I even let go of my assistant. I went back to myself and doing the traditional what I did before. Luckily, I had I had a segment of my diversified my clientele that was not lender related. It was attorneys, and at the time it was bankruptcies. So I was doing bankruptcy valuations, and if you look backwards, there was so many bankruptcies filed at that time because people were doing short sales, and that saved me like you have no idea. So I went back, and then miraculously over time, I actually wound up rebuilding and adding people as needed. Never got to that crazy point as that was, but did expand again. But yeah, it was bad.
That's interesting. So, did you recognize that pivot right away from appraisals to bankruptcy, or did that take time? Because that's actually very like smart. Because you could have also just gone back to, I mean, probably not going to sell houses during that time either, right? But it is always an option where maybe it's a little bit better if you're like trying to sell houses. I guess, yeah, people would potentially need to sell their houses, so wouldn't they need a realtor, right? So you could have done that too.
The market was restricted though, so my husband, or my soon to be, because then we did actually get divorced soon after. Financial stress always incites divorce too. So no, selling really wasn't an option. I was like, had to tell my appraisers, I don't have anything to give you. So unfortunately, there's nothing for me to even do to keep you. They all went and dispersed, and some of them got out of the industries, some went other places. And I was lucky enough to have been introduced to these attorneys who then started referring me because I did really good work and was responsive. Unlike a lot of appraisers that don't know how to market themselves, the skill set that I had as a realtor in customer service and communication, that set me apart as an appraiser because they didn't do that. A lot of times they take the order, they never want to talk to you because that is not the traditional personality of an appraiser. So I used that, and I'm not even kidding. I wound up doing just fine and building it back up. And not to say that I didn't take a hit, but I survived where majority of appraisers, they went bankrupt or out of the business.
Okay.
So, but recognizing pivots and diversifying your business is a strategy and something that I encourage any entrepreneur to get real sooner. So many times in my business, I'm like, why didn't I see that coming? And I think a lot of times we get so comfortable and we're like, but it's really good. How could it end? And the thing is everything shifts eventually. And that is why moving forward, I was adamant about having a diversified business in everything that I did. Okay, that's why even when you get your E&O insurance or your liability insurance, they want to know as far as your clientele goes, do you have one client that gives you all your work? Because if they go under, you're sunk, right? So I've always been really careful then to try to diversify and do more than one thing. And it's important in every business, but in a collaborative way that feeds the other. You don't want to have a car dealership and then, have a puppy watching business or something.
So then before you started the brokerage, you already had the dance going, right? And then you already had a business for the appraisals, and then kind of like, the bankruptcy and all that. So then was it really easy to start a brokerage because you've already ran businesses where you've had employees? Was it kind of just like you just are going to do something else now, or what was that like for you?
Brokerage is hard. Okay. And when I first did the brokerage, I never did it with the intention of bringing on other agents.
Really? Okay.
No, I just I'm a broker. I'm going to do my own thing.
What's the benefit to just doing that potentially? Like, why wouldn't you just stay as a realtor?
I say as a realtor
instead of being because you said you became a broker and you're just going to be a broker and like have no people under you. So is there an advantage to doing that as opposed to just keeping your real estate license?
It's a lot less lonely. Okay. Honestly, so think back. I'm a dance teacher. I love to mentor. I love to teach. I love to watch people grow. So I could sit here and I could, make all my own money and sit in my money and be by myself, but that isn't fun, and real estate is 24/7. It's exhausting, especially if you are really putting 110% into it. And I'd much rather share the pie with a group of people that inspire me and that make it fun to come to work every day than to keep it all to myself and work myself into a dizzy. I'd like to work less and share and have more scale. So it just makes more sense to me. So that's why, because I love collaboration. I love people. That's why I decided to do it. But I have a small, tight knit team, and I just love them.
So kind of looking at today, then, has it been, because obviously the economy hasn't been great, has it kind of slowed down lately, or is it still? I mean, because I think LA too is a very unique market where it probably is still, things are still going pretty good, as opposed to if you're probably in a different state, it probably might slow down a lot more, right? So what's that been like the last year and a half?
LA is so unique in so many ways because there are markets within markets. We have such a diverse, you look and you're like, okay, you can buy a condo for $100,000 in one part of the LA County, and then you have the most expensive home in Malibu or, Beverly Hills and, Brentwood right here. It's crazy. The diversity is just insane. We have experienced the shift just like everybody else, and it's still coming and it's not over with. And last year when it started to come and I was in denial a little bit, I'm like, no, I don't want it to come. I know this is going to hurt. I've been, we've done that before.
They've done that.
So, but the reality is you have to brace for it and be smart. Putting your head in the sand isn't going to make it go away. So, we started to reorganize all of our expenses and more intensely really reorganize how we're doing our business, and going deeper rather than wide. And to be honest with you, going back to basics more than ever. No, all the gimmicky, all that other stuff, it's not going to matter. People want real.
So when you started to see that things were kind of trending in a bad direction, do you think then like back to 07, 08 and like you lived through that and you were in the actual industry where it was really bad? And so are you kind of then planning like if something like that happens again? I mean, maybe you're not even thinking like that's going to get that extreme now, but are you thinking of that at all and like planning ahead? How does that work?
Well, so now this point in my career, in the last few years, I've also become an investor myself. Okay. I have rental properties. I also, I've participated in flipping properties. I hate that word, but regentrifying properties.
House flippers.
Yeah, I know. So, so I diversified my business in that sense. And some of those income streams that were really lucrative, I'm not pursuing doing anymore. I'm like, no, we're not going to do this. The risk isn't, the reward really doesn't outweigh the risk at this time, given that, and this is an appraiser, I'm not completely confident in some of the timing, and I'm not really willing to invest some of my money in certain things. I mean, unless it's such a slam dunk, but those aren't that easy to find anymore, right? Every investor has their different threshold of, what they feel is worth it to them. It's personal. But getting back to just the pivot point with the diversifying, what was the question again? Because I got off on my tangent.
I was listening. I asked if, because you lived through 07 and 08 and experienced that, it was basically like, are you thinking of that happening now? Like, how far ahead are you thinking? And then you kind of mentioned how you diversified your portfolio into like properties and all of that, and then doing some house flips.
So am I optimistic?
So like, it sounds like, though, I guess, is there anything you're doing? I guess you kind of already mentioned it as far as just the brokerage itself. I guess you did mention you're kind of restructured how things work and you're not doing the like cookie cutter stuff. So is that kind of, you have recognized that you needed to change stuff and you've just been doing it, and it's kind of, is there anything else that you need to do in the future, or you think you're in a good place?
So what I've decided as far as my company goes, how we've decided to react to what's happening is, I've scaled down on just our team in general. And so I can actually have a lot more hands-on with them to make sure that they have the skill set and the support they need, because newer agents are going to need a lot more support. This is not a market for rookies. Not to say you can't be a rookie, but you're going to need to have a mentor there, and you can't wing it in this market. How about that? You have to educate yourself and you have to do the extra work. Also, the other thing that I'm telling my newer agents that are just up and coming is, whatever you saw agents do in the last year, you're going to have to double and triple that. So just get over it. Don't be sad about it. Don't be angry about it. Just get to work, because
as far as the cold calling, everything, the work part,
everything,
the down and in the gutter. Okay.
Where it might have taken 10 people to talk to in order to, find a transaction, you might need to talk to 30 now. But here's the beauty in that. This is where like stars are born. Okay. Because once you go through a market like this, the skill set, you're going to be a better agent. It's just going to make you better on the other side. That's like saying, oh my gosh, I wanted to go row the river, but it's like storming and there's so many ways. You learn to row through the storm. When it's clear, you can be like, what? This is so easy. Or like, say you're running and you have weights on your ankles, and then you take off the ankle weights and you're like, wow, I feel so light. This is like this, what, you can go so much faster. So, instead of like getting upset about it, accepting it. And the one thing that I will say is there's opportunity in every market. You want to think there isn't? Look what COVID happened. You think there was not opportunity with people selling COVID tests and doing testing? Those people made so much money. So our job is to sit down and look and say, okay, where is the need? Instead of saying the market needs to come to me, we are supposed to be serving the market. We need to find it. Have you ever read Who Moved My Cheese?
I've not. What is that?
Okay, number one, recommend. I read a lot of books. It's called Who Moved My Cheese. I'm not going to give it away, but it's a cute story. You can listen to it on Audible. It takes about an hour. But if anybody's in business, or even if you're not, even if you work in a corporation and you're trying to work yourself up the ladder, I would say that is a number one recommend. It's a great moral of the story.
Okay.
So that's, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away too much. The title says a lot.
I'll look it up.
But it does come down to people's expectation of, they get so used to being fed by something that they feel is certain. And when it moves, you have different personalities that are like, well, that's not supposed to be this way. And they get upset, versus the people that are like, oh, I guess it changed, so I need to change, versus the people that are like, we might want to learn some other different tactics in the off chance it changes, so we can pivot. And in business, you need to be the person that can pivot. You don't want to get stuck expecting someone to keep bringing you cheese.
So going along with the think bigger idea, because you mentioned that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
it seems in the stage of your life now is you have the brokerage and there's that you can build that, but now you also have you're an investor and you have properties.
Mm-hmm.
So are you trying to grow both of them, or are you is kind of because I to me the ultimate is more the investor when it comes to real estate. It's like having the money to buy apartment buildings, or if you want to do commercial, right? And that seems to be like the end goal. So is that your end goal, to where you have a bunch of different property and you can just kind of be an investor and kind of take your foot off the brake a little bit more? Kind of how you mentioned you kind of want to start taking right taking some time. So
Mm-hmm.
is that the final goal for you, or is what do you think?
We'll have to see. I mean, I do see myself maybe slowing down in production. My goal is in the next 5 years. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked a lot of hours for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do love the investing as well. If it's right now, we're in a weird transition in the market where I'm not really excited about rentals right now because the city of LA rent control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get into that whole platform today. So I'm kind of like the mouse that's right now trying to find what is the door that I'm not seeing in the room, because everything's changed and it's foggy now, and it's like, okay, there's opportunity. There's opportunity. I know there is. I just don't think I've been able to identify it precisely yet.
Mm-hmm.
And when that does, that'll be, my next step. Do I love real estate? I love real estate. I love making things beautiful and adding to the community. A lot of times people look at people and say, oh, flippers. And I don't know if it's just because they're all a little bit resentful because they're like, damn, I would do that if I could. Here's the thing. I just want to give a reality check because I feel like it needs to be said and it's not said enough.
Mm-hmm.
These people are buying a property, usually non-contingent, meaning that they can't get out of it once they make their commitment, and they don't know what they're buying. They usually don't even get to really do an inspection, okay? They have to hope that they can get everything done in the time frame that they want to for the price that they think that it can be done at, and that the market doesn't change, right? And then they also have to hope that the city approves whatever it is and not delay them longer.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much risk that people don't even understand in this process, that they're super brave. And they're usually taking these properties that a normal first-time buyer would never have the money, time, or expertise to correct and to rehab, because it's expensive and it takes time and you can't live in these properties while you're doing it. So while, yes, I know that a lot of people, I look at, oh, it's a flip, they're actually making the neighborhood nicer. They're holding property values and they're taking all of the risk for everyone else. So, before you hate them, just realize that there is a lot on the other side of that. So I actually, we need them, whether we like it or not. We do. Because most homeowners, they don't have the funds.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to give a little shout out to our investors in that way.
So you talked earlier about Elon Musk,
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vee,
Mm-hmm.
thinking big, right? There's someone you haven't mentioned who we have to talk about, I think. So can you tell people who Tom Ferry is, and kind
Oh,
of
sure.
your whole thing with that?
Yeah, so I did coaching for a long time with Tom Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a really big advocate.
Who is he?
So
For
Tom
people that.
Ferry, he's a real estate coach,
Mm-hmm.
and he he's instrumental because I, he's able to have a network of people, and he takes all the information from all these big corporate leaders, from lenders to real estate professionals. He's talking to the average realtor all over the United States and beyond, actually, and he helps boil it down in and really identify like what we should be doing in the market right now. And because he has a lot of those inside tracks. So I'm a big fan. I think that he's a real industry leader. He's innovative. He's fearless, definitely. So I would say definitely a great mentor in that sense, for hands down. So
Yeah, I wanted to bring him up because you mentioned mentors, and you even mentioned, at least in the LA market in real estate, you do need a mentor, you think, because it's a big market, right? So do you think a mentor is an important ingredient to success in anything you do?
1,000%, but I think it can be a couple different ways.
Okay.
So I think we have to, before you can even accomplish what you're accomplishing, and this is what's so beautiful about the podcast that you're doing, is you have to know it's possible for you. That's how you manifest. If you think, you look at someone on TV and you're like, wow, that seems nice. They have a yacht, but there's not possible for me, or you don't even see how that could be, you will never be able to achieve that. You have to know it's possible. So the wonderful thing that happens like in these type of situations is someone might be able to identify with me and say, wow, she had 3 kids. I thought with having 3 kids, I wouldn't be able to do real estate. Or, she was divorced twice. And first time it's twice the same guy. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I don't have it all going on. Like people look at me and they think, oh, but you're Jen. And I'm like, are you kidding? I have my own hot mess over here. The difference is I don't allow it to, I don't allow it to stop me. Like I use it to fuel me forward instead of keeping me in bed. Like I always used to say, I don't have the luxury of laying in bed and crying and commiserating about all my problems, because I want to get up and I want to try to fix them, and I have to have a good life for my children. So they are actually my ammunition that has kept me going all these years, because I felt like they deserved it more than anything. So, but getting back to the mentor, you have to have someone, and having someone in your sphere is super important. Someone that's tangible, that you can talk to, that you can bounce ideas off. 1,000%, especially in the first 4 years of real estate, if you're gonna, or anything, to be honest with you, anything that you're gonna do. But you also want to have that person that you identify with, because your mentor might not be someone that you personally identify with. It might be, someone that you just has the knowledge, but maybe you don't think they had your same path. Someone on your path. So I had someone that I idolized that I still have never really met in person. I've met her daughter, and she's a luxury agent. She's still around. She's in LA. And I decided one day, I was at the theater, and I opened my theater bill. I'm a big theater person because of course I dance. And it was at like the Amundsen or some amazing theater, right? And she had a full page ad. And I was like, oh my God, how much was this? She's sponsoring the Amundsen? I was like, what? This is nuts. And so already I was intrigued by her, because a weird fate of coincidence, I actually had met her daughter like 6 months before on an appraisal. And I was doing an appraisal, and she's like, oh, I'm so-and-so's daughter. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know who she is. She's the top agent, luxury agent, like superstar. And I was like, well, tell me, what is her secret? What's her secret? And she said, well, there's no secret. You just have to answer the phone. And agents don't like to answer the phone. Okay. That was her big secret. But they told me her story, which I didn't know. She was a single mom. I could relate to that. Unlike me, she didn't go to college. She was a waitress in Beverly Hills, and she got into real estate, and she was really good connecting with people. And I was like, oh my God, here's someone that is selling properties to these high net worth individuals that have gone to Harvard, gone to Yale. I mean, world traveling people with multiple homes, selling $60 million. Just so you guys know, selling a $60 million home is really hard. It's really hard. It's very specific. So you think the higher the price tag, with every dollar, it gets harder. Anyways.
Because there's less people that can
correct.
buy it, right? You have to find the person.
And the higher the price point, the more specific, because those type of people, they could just build it. They could just build it. So why would they even buy it? So there's a whole nother set of problems there. But getting back to the story of her, she was a single mom. She was a waitress. She worked her way up, and it was something that I could really relate to. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, if a waitress with less background than I had can make it in an industry like this, I want to be in the industry that is. And I made it my intention to go after that industry, because I never gave myself permission prior to that to even thinking it was possible. I was just going to stay in my little area that I'd always worked in and just continue to sell. And she expanded me into allowing the possibility of selling that higher price point. And guess what? I did. I wound up getting an $8 million listing. Wow. I know. And I am now jumped up into the price point of over 3 million, which, think about it. In the beginning, I was just trying to get a $300,000. Right?
Yeah.
So as far as the mentor goes, yes, it's important to have a teacher, someone that is teaching you the ropes, but you really need to find someone that you relate to that can show you that's possible. Those people, you hold on to them. Even if you never meet them, it doesn't matter. They need to be on your mirror, and that you need to have them there pulling you towards your goal too. That is so important.
Okay.
All right.
We're back, everyone. Sorry, Yay. The video went out. Okay, so we just talked about mentors. What's advice for someone that wants to get into real estate? What do you think? What would you say? Like as an agent?
Run. No, I'm kidding. I would tell them, just like, actually, it doesn't matter what you're getting into. I think you have to really think about the intention of why you're doing it. Recently, my niece decided to get into real estate and join my team. And I was a little bit off-putting when she's like, I want to call and talk to you. And I was like, oh. And I felt bad because I know her so well. I'm like, I don't know if you're cut out for this. You get irritated. You're going to like not like people or something. And that really isn't fair. And so I had to kind of like cut that and let her make her own decision, but still be honest without talking her out of it. Because just like every industry, it's not for everyone. And that's okay, because it's not supposed to be. We're all different. But I would say get really clear about why. Your why and your intention has to be there, because I think we're at a time in just the collective universe in general, as far as careers go, your intention and your motivation, being interested isn't enough anymore. Like, you're like, oh, I think I'm going to do this, or I think I'm going to do this. I'm interested. It's okay to play, but you have to commit to actually make any progress in anything, like 110%, because things are more focused and just more, just the depth of knowledge that you have to have in most industries now. At a certain point, you got to go all in. So I would say get super clear on your intention. And then once you get super and clear on your intention and what you want from it, align yourself with the best people possible to help you get there.
Okay. So that's a good segue then to, because at the beginning of this, you said you've kind of always been figuring it out. And even today, you don't feel like you figured it out, right? I think, and I know for me, this hits home. It's like, I think a lot of people struggle with finding the thing they're interested in or like really passionate about. And it sounds like, or just like feel like they have to figure out life. And they haven't, right? And it seems like you said, you've kind of always felt that way, but you've always been doing things still. Like, you're still going forward, right? And I think for a lot of people, myself included, it's like you kind of just get stagnant and you're so in your head about, oh, should I try this or shouldn't I try this? Well, what if I do this and I hate it? And then it's like I spend another, 5 years doing this and I still don't know what I want to do. So what's your advice? Do you have any advice for people that struggle with that? What would you say?
So many people do. And I think that vacillation, that, do I jump in the pool? Do I not? It keeps you on the sidelines, right? You don't get to enjoy anything. So again, I give everyone permission to go 110% into anything and like give it all you got. And at the end of the day, still change your mind. It's okay. But you're never going to know if it's what you really want unless you actually get in and get wet. You know, dipping your toes in is not the same as swimming, right? It's not the same experience. So you have to go all in. When I was single and I was dating, I had met this young man in New York City who was retired at the age of 31. Wow. And he was a multimillionaire, and he had just got back from traveling around the world, took a whole year off to travel around the world. And I was fascinated by him because he was actually a little bit younger than me, and he was so wildly successful. And he seemed to really genuinely, he was super confident, and he was generally happy, you know? And I asked him, I was like, so what is it? Like, and he's like, 110%. He's like, have you noticed, like, everything he did it full out without expectation of even what he'd get in return. He just did it all the way and then some. So what I even tell my agents, for me, some of the most successful people I know, and specifically in the real estate field, in sales, because it can be hard on your heart because you're like, I'm trying, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere sometimes. But ask that to an actor or actress too, right? Or a musician, is there's no plan B. You know, when you give yourself an option for an out or a cop out where you're like, well, I'll do this, but if I don't, I'm going to go back to doing this. You actually set yourself up for failure because you're not really taking away that safety net that makes you go all in and stay the extra hour because you're like, oh my God, I have to make this work. When you're oh my God, I have to make this work, you will do. It's not a question of, do I want to make one more call? You're like, I'm making my calls until I get a deal, because I don't pay rent. It's or whatever it is that you need. So that mentality, when you're an entrepreneur or you're especially new in the business, you have to earn the privilege to take a day off, or you have to earn the privilege to say, you know what, I don't want to make that call because I know I've done so much pedaling already that my boat is still going to go, or I know I can let off a little bit and we're still going to cruise. It's okay. Or I've diversified enough that I have something else coming in. But I shouldn't say that. A lot of times people that are coming in specifically to this industry, they think it's sexy and they think, oh, it's so easy. It's like, no, it's not. You know, you put in the work, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. But you know, the first 4 years, it's gritty. You have to put it in and earn that privilege to take your foot off the gas. And it will happen though. It's a beautiful thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, did that just fall in my lap? How did that come so easy? And all of a sudden you're like looking around wondering how it happened, and then it happens more. So
going off of that, there seems to be two buckets with your life from what I've heard, where the one bucket's passion, and you got that with the dancing, right? And having your own business there. And then you've mentioned a few times about you needing to think bigger and really go after it. And to me, to kind of just sum that up is like the pursuit of excellence. And so, like we kind of just talked about, people don't know what the passion is. And what you just described to me is like, well, the pursuit of excellence, though, can fulfill that. And so do you think it's almost like a mindset shift, I think, right? Where instead of focusing on passion or what you're interested in, it's more of like, I'm going to be excellent at whatever I'm doing. And then you just keep going. So do you think, is that like, that should be the mindset, and maybe that's like a replacement for passion, and then maybe you find passion along the way? Do you think that's like good advice for people?
I think you summed it up beautifully, even better than I could have. I'm like, wow, that's exactly it. And you have to have pride, you know, and not just show up and phone it in. If you're going to show up and you're going to spend your time, do it amazingly. And if you're that unhappy, then find something that you can show up for, that you can at least be happy showing up, because this is your life, guys. There's no do-over. There's no rewind button. So you want to, that's why I say be intentional about what you put your time into.
Okay. Talking a little bit about investing in real estate, do you think you can invest in real estate if you don't have money, or do you need the money? Like, can you like to find someone that's funding it essentially? Maybe you're doing the work, maybe you're the one doing all like the flipping, right? You're doing the interior and all that. Is that, or do you need money essentially?
Oh, so that's a tough question, because there are ways that you can participate in the process, but maybe not be the financial side. Because I say that and I'm like thinking, no, you absolutely have to have money. But at the same time, if you don't have the money yourself, then you need to partner with someone who does, and you need to be the other part of the equation. And I have actually done that. And I've found creative ways to get into it, where I'm like, okay, well, I don't have the money to buy the house. This person has the house. Maybe I can flip it for them, and then we can split the profits. So I've gotten super good at getting really creative in finding out of the box ways to find opportunities. Again, going down the logical path, everybody is doing that. It's super competitive. So this is where you have to be creative and think, okay, well, what other opportunities can there be? Now, there may not be as many of those, but all you need is one or two, and then you start getting your own money together, so then you can take it to the next step. I think the hardest part of investing it all is, first of all, just doing it the first time. So if you're like, look, I have $5. I'm going to put it with yours, and can you make me part of this, and then give me back 10, and then you do it again and again. We underestimate. We think, oh, until I can do this much, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's a mistake. We wait too long. So just finding whatever avenue it is that you can, even if it is just getting your own property so that you can get some appreciation, and then trading up and taking the tax, and here's the thing, when you're young, it's when you're the most open to living anywhere, right? It's when you get older and you get married and you have kids, and then you're like, okay, I don't want to just live anywhere anymore. I have my kid. But, if I was smarter, it took me a long time to get into my first home. I shouldn't say a long time. I was into my first home by the time I was 28. But I would have even done it at 20, and thought, okay, who cares? It's just a little condo, because I'm not going to have it forever, and I can take the appreciation or rent it afterwards. But I didn't have that coaching. Ironically, my brother at 19 years old, or actually 18 years old, I take that back, I was 19, had received some inheritance money from my dad's passing, and he took it and he bought a house. Not in an area I would want to buy a house, but it didn't matter. And he was able at that time, because of the market, the seller actually carried back the note. He didn't even have to get a loan.
Wow.
And so my brother has been a homeowner since 19. He has traded up several times.
Okay.
And always made money. And, it's amazing to me. I mean, that's crazy.
It is.
And so instead of renting, he went and he bought a house. Now, again, it might not have been a house that any of us would have, what. We need to understand that we have to earn the privilege to buy our dream home. Nobody starts with their dream home. That's not the reality.
So that's some good advice for first-time home buyers, and I did want to touch on that too. I think people probably, and you would know this because you do it for a living, but there's probably a lot of fear with timing the market, right? Like, oh, is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy? I think it also depends on, are you looking to, live there forever unless something goes wrong, or are you looking to stay there 5 years and then maybe, like you said, like upgrade? Do you have advice for someone? Like, should they just buy? I guess, does it come down to if they're looking to stay there, like really long term, or if it's short term as far as timing the market? Because now obviously it's not a great time with interest rates are up, right? But I'd imagine prices are also down. So like, how do you balance when's the right time to buy? Do you
They're
think
not down that much.
they're not down that much?
No,
Okay.
no. I mean,
Here though, right?
they've softened, but they're not, we had captured about 21.6% appreciation in 1 year. Just to keep it in perspective, normal is 3 to 4%. 21.6% appreciation in 2021.
2021. Okay.
Yes. And last year in 2022, the average amount for California was about 12%.
So it's still going up.
So
Okay.
now we lost our appreciation from 2022,
Okay.
but we still have all that appreciation that we're sitting. Yeah. So all I'm saying is this. Would I recommend to somebody that is moving into an area that is only going to live a year, that when they move, if they can't rent it and cover costs, is it better to rent or better to buy than rent? Everyone's personal situation is a little bit different, but overall, if you can hold a property, say easily from 2 to 4 years, and you can secure a payment that you can afford, then just buy. In the end, you're going to be able to have tax write-offs, and even if you don't get a ton of appreciation, at least you wrote off your rent. And if you don't need to sell it and you can go somewhere else and either purchase again or rent, because in the reverse, and you can rent it out, you still have a property that's giving you appreciation. So where every situation is different, you want to be smart about it. You find out, what is my budget? What is the best thing I can buy? And then just buy it. And then guess what? Go live your life. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. My brother, when he bought his property at 19, he didn't think about appreciation. Yeah. He didn't think about any of that. He said, I need a place to live. This is what I can afford. I'm going to buy it. And that's what he did. Yeah. And then he lived his life and hung out with his friends at 19 in his house. So, I mean, could you imagine? I didn't even think about how popular he was.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about, honestly. That's really crazy.
Yeah, and it was his. So, I mean, I think we overthink all of it. Everyone is an investor now. Everyone, who gets to be investors? Investors with a lot of cash. They should be timing the market. They're putting $1 million cash non-contingent into a property. They don't know what's wrong with it. They're going to dump another $500,000 into it and then hope that the market appreciates so they can capture appreciation against the improvements. It's a lot of money. They should be timing the market. A normal person that's going to live in the house, just get one you can afford. Get the best thing you can afford and go live your life.
Okay.
That's it.
So I think a lot about what I would do if I was 18 again. And I think of it in terms of not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, right? Like, I personally, when I was 18, I had no idea, really. And so I think what would actually be like really good for someone, because I'm thinking of people that are 18 now graduating high school, is maybe you just get, like, you go to junior college and you get your credits, and then you can, if you end up wanting to go to college, you can transfer because you got all your like electives that you needed out of the way, right? But as far as making money, do you think if someone was to just door knock, like, let's say 3 houses a day for a year, that's 1,000 houses, right? I would imagine if they got good at it, they'd obviously have someone that wants to sell, right? Or at least maybe they know someone, that person knows someone that wants to buy or sell, right? Let's say though they don't want to like get the real estate license. Is there a way with that? Do you think if like that person reached out to an agent, would that agent like be open to, if that person was just bringing them deals, would they split the commission? Like how do you think that would work? Like, knowing that you've done this, like, could they get commission from that or like negotiate in that way? Would you ever be like, let's say you were back when you were just starting out, if you had someone who literally would just bring you deals of people that wanted to sell, would you give up commission? What do you think about that?
So it's a great question, and wow, what a smart thing. If they just took the initiative, 3 doors a day, would probably spend an hour a day just meeting people, right, and networking. I bet you that they could. Unfortunately, in the state of California, you cannot take any commission or commission cut unless you are licensed.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So if they were to knock on a door,
Mm-hmm.
they would have to do it purely as a solicitation basis, handing out a flyer. They can't talk about the market. You can't pose yourself as a realtor or a real estate agent unless you're licensed. It is against the law. So, so that they could give the information. They'd have to say, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm just delivering this on their behalf. Please call them if you have any questions in that way. They can get paid hourly. So, and I'm sure that they could probably get a nice bonus check, every month for anything that closed, but they can't get a commission.
So let me change it then. You're a broker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say an 18-year-old comes to you, wants to get his or her license and be an agent, but doesn't actually want to be an agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be under a brokerage too, obviously, right? To be considered an agent. Would you think people would do that where they're just door knocking? That's all they do, and then maybe they team up with an agent under the brokerage, then they could commission, right? And then it would just be a matter of if that person is willing to do that or not, right? Is that
Right.
realistic then, do you think?
Unlicensed?
If they're licensed.
Oh, if they're licensed.
But they're not working as an agent. They're just
Right.
going to door knock.
Right.
That's all they're going to do. And they're going to do whatever they want with their life. They're going to do 3 doors a day, let's say,
Yeah.
for years or whatever.
So the industry has changed a lot. And the independent solo agent that was the norm in like the 70s and 80s, that's quickly going away. And the reason being is with all these big conglomerates that have gotten into the real estate industry like Zillow and Redfin, they're big corporations. And in order to, not to say that it's a competition direct, but if you want to be comparable in some of the services and the timing and the resources that they have, it takes a village now, and it is a 24/7. So what's happening is teams are becoming more of the norm. And what happens is in the teams, everyone has a specialty. One person is really good at doing marketing and maybe they're cold calling and things like that. And that's all they do. And they get compensated based on their contribution for that. Maybe one part of the team is really good at all the transaction management. So they never do any of the generation, but they're closing it. And so that's what's happening. And that's what you're seeing with these mega agents that are selling, when they like to put on their Instagram, sold $100 billion or $100 million. They did not personally sell.
It's a team.
When you say how many people on your team, I have 30 people on my team. And, they have 5 listing agents that are generating these listings. I mean, not to say that they don't have contribution, but they are the face of their own, company within a company, really, is what's happening. And what it does is it allows consistency for a lot of the agents. So because, as you know, it can be an inconsistent industry. That's one of the reasons that agents go bankrupt is they're really, really rich and they're really, really poor. Then they're really, really rich and they're really, really poor. And finding that consistency, and a team can give that to you because maybe Sally closed 2 deals in March, but nothing in April. Well, good thing Lori closed something in April, and they're all sharing the pot, similar to like in a restaurant industry where they pool tips. So, Katie, who got stiffed on 3 tables and went home with $20 after working all night, and Sarah got, $350 because she had a huge party. Now it's more equality. And it's also based on contribution. So that's getting more popular, and it's becoming, it's helping people become more sustainable for people to have longevity. But if you outgrow your team or you don't like your role, sometimes that can be tricky.
Okay, but that is realistic for someone, let's say, that's like just graduated.
100%. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Call me.
Because even at the very least, like I think, like you kind of mentioned it, the networking aspect and the not being afraid to do that and kind of just getting the callus of not caring what people think, right? I think that's like invaluable just for life in general, for anything you're going to do, right? So at the very least, I feel like that would be good for someone.
It's really hard. And I have to say, I'm still learning that. Even myself, I'm always evaluating where I can grow. And and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what my limiting beliefs are. What are they? I feel so bold all the time. But when I boil it down, sometimes like no one wants to be judged. Okay. I don't care how rockin' superstar you are and how amazing you are. No one wants to be called out and told or felt like to defend yourself. It's exhausting, you know, even if you don't believe it and you know it's not true. It's exhausting to deflect that all the time. That's one of the reasons why I would never, I love politics, and I always feel like I want to champion for the underdog. And it's actually another core reason why I started my brokerage, is because I was so sick of bad representation and the way that certain companies were run, that I'm like, I can't tolerate this anymore. My value system is I can't even be in it. I'd rather just do it myself, because I have to do it in a certain way that I can honor myself when I look in the mirror, right? I can't be part of a shady company or a shady situation. So I just, the core belief of who you are is so important in that whole dichotomy of it all.
Last question. Let's go back to, how old would you have been? Your early 20s, right? You realize what the in DC, that's not what you want to do, and you're like, what am I going to do, right? That person is watching your life play out to now. What do you think that person would say? Expected, like that, of course, that's how it all turned out. Proud, happy.
I think she would first say, you're still working 12 hours a day? What? You still don't get to watch TV? I think she would say it was all worth it. Every single thing that went wrong, every setback, every frustration, it's really added to who I am. It's made me more fearless. It's, you know, it doesn't mean starting over gets easier where you're like, oh, here we go. I know what this means, you know, but you know, it's all okay. Like, I know, not that I want to manifest this and I don't want it to happen or anything, but if I lost everything tomorrow and I start over, I'd be like, okay, fresh start, clean slate, cool. We get to like start over, vanilla. You know, what do we want to make with our sandcastle today, right? Which sometimes people are so afraid of losing what little they think they have, but you know, in the end, we don't take any of it with us. It's just for play. So I would say that it's all worth it, and in the end, just remembering to stay true to yourself, and knowing that, you know, being a human means that there's some suffering and some pain, but that's usually when the growth happens.
If anyone wants to get in contact, let's say they want to buy a house, sell a house, maybe they have an investment property, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
They can text me, just call me directly on my cell phone. It's available at 818-613-1767. You can also find me on social media at Landon Realty Group. You can direct message me there. We're on Instagram, Facebook, all that. Reach out. Happy to.
TikTok or no? You guys doing
You know,
TikToks?
we do have TikToks, but kind of stopped a little bit. I'm not the TikTok queen that I thought I was going to. You know, I love all that, but it takes like time.
It's a lot.
I know.
It's a whole other thing.
I know.
You almost need a team, honestly, I feel like, if you're...
And I have one, and I
But like a social media team, I mean.
No,
you know?
I have one.
Oh, you have one too?
Yes,
okay.
I have one, because and even then, I feel like I need like just one for each thing. It's
tough.
And I love the TikTok dances and all that kind of fun stuff. But anyways, that's a whole nother.
We'll have to get you back on there.
All
right. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for doing it.